Some 41,168 eligible voters and some 99 polling stations where elections are taking place as we speak in the Assin North constituency by-election. This is your election command center. The special coverage of the Assin North by-election. This is a crucial by-election, especially for both the NPP and the NDC, because this 8th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana has been heavy on numbers, and that's why we've seen a lot of activity in the run-up to this by-election today. Polls opened at 7 a.m. In some other places, there were delays as was expected. But we are on the ground. We are on your radio on 3FM 92.7. We are also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSV channel 279, all across the world on freenews.com. This is your election command center, making sure that we are heavily represented on the ground. Every aspect of the constituency is covered here on your election command center, bringing you all the exclusive detail and also the interviews to derive exactly what's going on the ground. We're going to be getting into some analysis of how the statistics look like, and then also what has been happening in that constituency in the by-election, the Assin North by-election. There's been a lot of activity ahead of today, and rightly so, because if this goes on the side of the NDC, they're going to maintain the status quo in this 8th Parliament, where there's going to be 137 NPP MPs, 137 NDC MPs, and the independent candidate who is the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who have decided to do business with the NPP. But if it goes south, if it goes the other side to the NPP, now what they are seeking to do is to entrench their hold with a clear and simmering majority in this 8th Parliament. If essentially, if this happens, they're going to have technically 139, and that's 138 NPP MPs plus the independent candidate that shoots up their numbers to 139. That is how the dynamics looks like, and we're going to be getting into all of that. But what you're seeing right now are videos of what's happening in the constituency for our viewers on Facebook and also our listeners on 3FM 92.7. This is what's happening. We have people who gathered at the polling stations and then also listening to the instructions from the Electoral Commission polling officials who have been designated to the various polling stations. We have 99 polling stations in this Assin North constituency where this by-election is taking place. And our colleagues on the ground have covered most parts of this constituency before this by-election and the beginning of the polls, which opened at 7 a.m. today, and giving you an idea of what's happening on the ground. Generally, it's been peaceful so far. There's been accusations of vote buying, and then also accusations, allegations of journalists being attacked and so on. But what we're doing is go behind what you hear and what you read to bring you the exact detail, exactly what's going on in that constituency. There are people who are in long queues because there's been a lot of anticipation ahead of this by-election today. And as rightly so, the many people who turned up today to vote. Now, a lot is happening as well with respect to the voter turnout, because that's going to be very crucial, because if both the NPP and the NDC are going to get their numbers as expected, then it's going to be dependent a lot on the issues related to the voter turnout. Now, this particular constituency, as has been known as a swing constituency in the swing region. In fact, the central region, as we've known it to be, is a swing region. I mean, and then this constituency is just one of many constituencies in the central region that has been described as a swing region. Let's take a look back quickly into history to understand why this constituency is one that both the NPP and the NDC can lay claim to. In 1996, the NPP got some 34.7% of the total vote cast. Now, this is for the parliamentary historical performance of both NPP and the NDC. Now, if you look at this, in 1996, the NDC won this Assin North constituency with a whopping 63% of the total vote cast. In the year 2000, between 2000 and 2008, the NPP won this constituency. And I'll tell you why. Because the man who contested on the ticket of the NPP, Kennedy Ohenia Japan, who today is a flag bearer aspirant of the NPP, was the one who maintained. If you look at between the year 2000 and 2008, there's been some consistency in the percentage of votes that the NPP got. 56.6%, 58.6%, and then 55.1%. So they've been in that region of not less than 55% between the year 2000 and 2008. During that period, you look at the NDC's votes as well, the percentage that they garnered in that election, the year 2000, 39.7, 2004, 36.5, and 2008, 42.9. Now, you would understand why the NDC that won in 2012, because if you look at the historical analysis, in 2008, they increased their votes quite extensively from 36.5 in 2004 to 42.9 in 2008. So gradually at the time, they were increasing their hold in the constituency. So in 2012, the NDC won the Assin North constituency. And here's one of the reasons that has been ascribed to it. Because Kennedy Japan, at the time then, we saw this constituency actually being divided, where now the Assin Central constituency, where Kennedy Ohene Japan is now the member of parliament of, was carved out of the Assin North constituency. So then he went to contest in the Assin Central constituency on the ticket of the NPP and won the Assin Central constituency. Here's what's happened after 2012. The NDC won it. Then in 2016, the NPP got back its hold in the constituency with some 56.8% of the votes. Now, I'm taking you through these statistics. I'm going to show you the persons or the human beings behind these statistics, because that's instructive as well. Apart from Kennedy Japan that we saw between 2000 and 2008, in the year 2016, the NPP changed their candidate and they won in 2016. The NDC lost. Now, what we see with the others that have gone through over the period as well is this. In 2012, Samuel Ambre of the NDC won this seat with 51.64%. Keep that in mind, because in 2012, Ebenezer Apia-Kubi was the one who contested on the ticket of the NPP but lost. The vote difference between them was just a little over 2,000 votes. Now take a look at what happened in 2016. The NPP changed its candidate to Abnadruwa, who won the seat for the NPP with 56.67%. That's why I tell you that you should keep the statistics and the individuals, the personalities behind the statistics. It tells a story. Samuel Ambre, who was the incumbent in 2012, lost to the NPP in 2016 when the NPP changed its candidate to Abnadruwa. Now, keep Abnadruwa in mind, because in 2020, we saw something as well happening. The NDC changed its candidate from Samuel Ambre, who was the incumbent who lost in 2016, to James Atekwesen, who won the primaries and won the elections eventually in the 2020 general elections with some 17,498 of the total votes cast, which represent 55.2%. Abnadruwa, who was the incumbent in 2020, lost that election with some 14,193, 44.8%. Note the difference between the two. Just about almost 3,000 difference. In fact, just a little over 3,000 difference between James Atekwesen and Abnadruwa. Now, if you look at 2016, there was a difference of about almost 5,000 between the NPP and the NDC. So you think about it. If the NDC was able to close the gap of almost 5,000 in 2016, In 2020, they actually closed that gap and added more, and they stretched the difference between the NPP and the NDC to 3,000. Bear in mind that Abna Drowa won the 2016 elections with almost 5,000 difference between her and the NDC candidate. Now, James question comes in and overtakes Abna Drowa, wins that constituency with a gap of 3,000, almost 3,000. That tells a story that between 2016 and 2020, we saw the NDC increasing its hold in the constituency for the parliamentary. But if you look at what happened in the presidential as well, then you would understand why what happened in 2020 definitely had other dynamics apart from just the NDC increasing its hold. Because in 2012, when the NDC won the seat, presidential, the NDC won. John Mahama won as well, 54.37. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo just had a little over 11,800. The difference between them was just about 3,000. Look at what happened in 2016, presidential. When the NPP won presidential in 2016, parliamentary as well, they won. So that was consistent because both presidential and parliamentary was won by the NPP in 2016. Now keep that in mind. In 2020, take a look at this. Even though the NDC, James Jacques won the constituency for the parliamentary elections and effectively was pronounced as winner of the Assin North constituency elections in 2020. The NPP, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, won the presidential, which was a departure from what we had seen from 2012. So Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo polled some 16,067 of the total vote cast, so about 51.67%. And then the NDC's John Mahama followed quite closely with a little over 15,000 votes. What that meant was that there was some skirt and blouse situation where even though Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the presidential candidate of the NPP, won the presidential in the Assin North constituency in 2020, for the parliamentary elections, the NPP lost. So that's a typical skirt and blouse situation where the constituents felt like, you know what, we're going to vote for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, but for the parliamentary, we don't want Abna Drowa anymore. So we're going to vote for the parliamentary candidate of the NDC, James Jacques. That is what we saw in 2020. And that's why we've seen a lot of activity, because unlike the Komewo by-election where it was almost a done deal for the NPP because that was its stronghold, this constituency, the NDC had won it 3 times, and then the NPP had won it 4 times. So there was some legitimacy to the claim about both political parties believing that they have a hold, they have the probability of winning this particular constituency, especially because of the skirt and blouse situation that we saw in the 2020 election. If it had been the case that both the NPP won the presidential and the parliamentary in 2020, then you would say that, well, it's a done deal. But this Assin North constituency is one of 19 constituencies in the central region that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo won the presidential but lost the parliamentary. So we saw a lot happening in the 2020 elections where there was a lot of the skirt and blouse situation, especially in the central region. Now, we'll see whether these dynamics and how things played out in 2020 is going to repeat itself now or today. That the people, unlike 2020, there was a presidential and parliamentary election But now it's just a by-election focusing on just a parliamentary seat or the parliamentary elections in the constituency. So keep the statistics in mind, because that definitely gives us an idea of what's going to be happening going forward. Let's cross over live to the constituency now. Eric Mayonagbeta is my colleague, together with Komla Kluche, who's on the other side of the constituency, and then also William Evans. We have a stronghold of that constituency's coverage of the by-elections on the ground. Eric Mayonagbeta is connecting with me live from the Assin North constituency, the Assin Fosu specifically. Eric, thank you, as always. And tell us what's happening where you are since the polls opened at 7 a.m. Okay, we lost Eric Mayonagbeta, but unfortunately. We'll try to reconnect with him from the Assin Fosu area here on your election command center. But I'm going to show to you now what we do know from the Electoral Commission's statistics that they have on their website for the Assin North constituency. Some 41,168 eligible voters have been registered in there. Now, let's cross over back to the constituency, give you an idea of what's happening there. Eric Mayonagbeta is connecting with us. Mayona, what's happening where you are?
Yeah, voting has ended there, I think, because the queue is empty, even though the police and everybody is there.
Okay, so Mayona, if you can hear me, where exactly are you, and what's happening where you are since the polls opened at 7 a.m.?
Alfred, and so currently I'm at Tetra and Kwanta, also within the Assin North constituency. It's on the road headed towards Kushia, and interestingly, at this particular polling station, the queues are no more. When we went by this place about an hour ago, there were individuals in the queue who were waiting to take their turns to vote. We are just returning from the Kushia area, headed to the Praso part of the Assin North constituency, which is the border town, the border constituency, the border area really, because after Praso you begin to enter the Ashanti region, and it appears that this place at Kete and Kwanta, yet to get the indication if it really is the case that all of them are done voting, or it's the instance of some persons going about their business and waiting to return much later to vote. But currently, the place is empty. The election officials are seated and having a conversation amongst themselves as we just arrived at this particular constituency. We moved from Assin Chiano just a short while ago, and it is a sharp contrast because at Assin Chiano there's a queue there, but at Tete and Kwanta here it appears that the queues are empty. You're just seeking to get a bit of understanding if it is the case that they've exhausted all the expected individuals who are supposed to be voting at this particular polling station, or there are still individuals who are waiting to be able to cast their ballot. But just by way of a bit more information as well, we've been to quite a number of constituencies since our poll started. We were at Dansame when voting started, and it started smoothly. All the areas where we've been to, there's practically been little to nothing in terms of misunderstanding, confusion whatsoever. But for the other areas like in Chiano, where we just came from, the observer team of the NDC made their way to one of the polling stations, and an officer asked that they step out of the voting area to allow for the constituents to be able to vote. And Baba Jamal raised objections to that because he made the argument that he's been accredited by the Electoral Commission as an observer, and so he can make his way into the inner perimeter to observe exactly what it is that is happening. That misunderstanding ensued for quite a while. There was a back and forth of conversations between the two of them, but eventually they both smoked the peace pipe and then they moved on with the observation. I mentioned that at Tata Nkwanta, it appeared that the queue was empty. Now there's another individual who's come now to cast her vote, and she's just going through the process now. And so just a sharp contrast between Assin, where we left, to this place. There, the queue is quite, there's a long queue, but here, just an individual currently going through the process. The validation is being done, and then her finger is being placed on the biometric machine for verification, and then the indelible ink will be used on her little finger, and then she can be given her ballot paper to be able to vote, Alfred.
Security was very topical ahead of today. In terms of security, what do you see? How many police officers have been designated to a particular polling station, at least the polling stations that you visited so far?
Well, the police officers have been here in their numbers. From all the polling stations I've been to, you can count less than 6 to 7 police officers. And so they are here in their number. They are seated from the various areas that we visited. They are quite present. They've been crisscrossing as well, even beyond those who are stationed at the polling areas. There are those who are in STU vehicles and trucks who continue to move about. There are those on motorcycles, the visibility team, who are as well stationed, some moving about, and going round and round to ensure that everything is smooth and there's no misunderstanding whatsoever. And so the presence of the police is here and quite visible. In terms of a quick reference to the conversations as to the security apparatus and the detailing that we would see, yesterday the assurance was given that they will be in identifiable police uniform with their name tags embroidered on it. That's the case where we've been throughout all the 6 polling stations that we've been to all throughout this morning, Alfred.
I see. Now, there was another concern ahead of today about the arrival of polling agents and then also the electoral officers at the various polling stations early enough for the polls to start at 7 a.m. You had reported there were a few delays in there, but do we know if all the 99, at least the polling stations within your jurisdiction that you have visited, the voting has started?
The concern will largely be to some of the areas where the roads are a bit deplorable and not quite accessible. But from where we've been and all of the checks that we've done, voting has started, voting is ongoing, people have been able to vote, and they're moving about their business. I met the Deputy Minority Leader, Ama Kofi Boa, who had visited some of these areas and spoke that as to wherever he's been to, voting is ongoing as well. And so, yes, there could be a very legitimate concerns as to a bit of a delay, but as to where we were at, even by 6 a.m., before 6 a.m., I should say, the electoral officials were there, there were queues there already, and individuals were waiting to vote, particularly at Asina Konfudi. The indigents were in line even before 6 o'clock. The election officials were there, present as well before 6 o'clock, and beginning to put together all of the polling booths and the lights for the voting to take place. And so from where we've been, voting has started, it's been ongoing, and it's been smooth.
I see. Now, for the Electoral Commission officials as well, the various polling stations, I know you've been talking to the Electoral Commission ahead of today. What have you observed at these polling stations that you've visited so far?
Alfred, so far so good. I think one thing that was notable when the poll started was making room for the old and the aged to be given the opportunity to vote first so that the much younger ones can then take their turn. And so when voting started at Dansami, where we monitored initial proceedings, the electoral official, they explained to those who were in the queue that they would need to allow persons who are a bit older the opportunity to go through the process and vote, and then for the younger ones, they can continue with the queues that they formed. And so that was one. At another area where they were going through the ballot papers, the serial numbers, and the like, the EC official, particularly at Achima Confid, walked all of them through the process and sought to get a general sense of agreement from all the polling agents before he proceeded on to the next step. And so with regards to the ballot papers, they've all been sealed. He takes it. He mentions exactly what is on it, the serial numbers from where it starts from and where it ends, and asks that they've been given all of those details. They cross-check to be sure that it is what it is. They agree before he moves on to the next ballot paper. He moves on to the next. And then with serial numbers as well, he takes them through it, asks that if they are interested, they take pictures or they write out the numbers before he puts them, or he seals the ballot papers, and then asks that they also bring about their seals. They all look at it, and then they seal the ballot papers. And so generally, even at the area where Baba Jamal was sent away, Kushachiano, when the police officer was insisting that he cannot be in the inner perimeter where voting was taking place, it was the polling station supervisor there who intervened and asked an urge for calm, and that there was no need for the back and forth between the two of them, and that he was in charge and that he would see to everything going on smoothly. And so from where we've been to, and that's what Lanty will be speaking to, so far so good. Election process has been smooth. Voting has gone on quite well. But for just a few niggling issues, like I mentioned, the Baba Jamal issue and the house at Assin Breku, where it had to do a lot more with voter inducement and the consent from one faction that they cannot allow somebody to continue in that regard. It's been all smooth. There's been the V8 Land Cruisers crisscrossing as well, visiting as many areas as possible to drum home the message as to voting for their candidate. Interestingly, also, another thing that I will mention, beyond the voter inducement that has been witnessed, is the subtle campaigning still ongoing, and individuals making the case that you still need to vote for their particular candidate, whether it's your Fana form or a Soroho, which has become the theme, really, depending on where you stand. That is still ahead quite sadly here from the various polling stations that we visited.
Great. Eric, thank you. Thank you so much for this, and then also the updates from the Assin North constituency, specifically the outskirts of Assin Fosu. This is your election command center. We have our men on the ground. We'll definitely bring you up-to-date information every step of the way, the issues happening. We're getting information as well that someone who presented himself as a military officer has been arrested. An imposter in military uniform has been identified and arrested. That is the information that we're getting from the Assin North constituency by election. So the security is on high alert. Security was one of the major issues getting into today as well. And then also we understand that someone else has also been arrested who was adorned in NPP paraphernalia. We understand he has also been picked up by the security personnel there on the ground. 800 police personnel have been deployed to the 91 polling stations across the over 260 areas within the Assin North constituency. 260 settlements within the Assin North constituency, we understand, and some 91 polling stations with over 41,000 eligible voters. So it's a big day. But the security agencies say that indeed the Ghana Police Service had assured the political parties of the needed security going into today, and that's why we're getting this information that someone who presented himself as a military officer has been arrested, an imposter. And then also another person who has been arrested, we understand, was at the time of his arrest wearing MPP that's T-shirt and then adorned in MPP paraphernalia. We don't know exactly what the details of that particular arrest is, but stay with me. We will get you the details of that as well here on your election command center. But give you an idea of the picture as things are playing out in the constituency. And it's crucial, very, very important, because there are a number of reasons why this by-election is proving to be one that has seen a lot of activity, and rightly so, because this 8th Parliament has been all about numbers. The numerical representation of the NPP and the NDC in this 8th Parliament has proven to be everything that this 8th Parliament has been all about since 2021 till date. Now, 137 NPP, 137 NDC, with an independent candidate also breaking the tie. Now, this is, before we get into the details of how the representation looks like in Parliament, take a look at that. This is this imposter, what I spoke about earlier, this person who was wearing military uniform, presented himself as a military officer. He's been arrested. This imposter, that's what you see there. The Ghana Police Service were on high alert, and they are still on high alert. They've been able to fish out this gentleman who was wearing the military uniform, the camouflage. He has been identified and arrested eventually. So that's what you see on the screen there. The news just coming through is that a gentleman who presented himself as a military officer, an imposter, has been arrested. That's what you see on the screen there. For those of you listening to us on 3FM 92.7, the Ghana Police Service officials have just arrested a gentleman who presented himself as a military officer, wearing the military uniform, the camouflage, and then also the boots. And had it not been for the vigilance of the Ghana Police Service, in fact, he could have gotten away with that, because he had dressed just like the personnel who had been deployed to the area. What's helped the police service is that this particular place where the election is taking place, the military has not been detailed to be there. So when this gentleman appeared in military uniform, they knew that they had to look out for him. And then he's been picked up now. So that's what's happening now, for the benefit of those of you who are connected with us on TV3 Ghana on Facebook as well. That's what you see there. This is the news just coming through. The gentleman has been now put into the Jasican Force, there's the Form Police Unit vehicle, and he's been whisked away. So this military imposter, in fact, a gentleman who presented himself as a military personnel, he's been picked up and eventually taken away. Now, let's go straight to the constituency. Komla Kluche is there for us as well. And Komla is connecting with us from the Assin North constituency. Komla, where exactly are you? And I understand that this incident of this imposter who has been arrested happened where you are. What more do we know?
Okay, well, this self-styled military gentleman was, the gentleman who is dressed in a military paraphernalia. He was very close by to one of the houses that they are allegedly sharing the money or the inducements to the people. After several complaints that the people around have made to the police, they had to take some officials of the NDC and also some of the local youths to go in there and tell them that there is a serious operation ongoing there, to which they had gone to arrest this guy. The police have not told us precisely, what they know about this as of yet. The only thing we know is that he's been arrested, and just a short while ago, another gentleman, who was in the group that was backing the NPP candidate, Charles Opoku, has also been arrested, because whilst with Charles Opoku, there was a lady that was very nearer to them. I think they had some altercation of the sort, indicating that the lady was indicating that she was going to vote for James Jackie. Then he was saying that no, James Jackie is not any good candidate that he should vote for. This resulted in some heavy slaps that the lady received, and the police had to go there just after the slaps to arrest them. And two of them have been arrested. They were handcuffed, and then they have been taken into custody as we speak with you. This is Breku, the district capital, and this is where all the actions are happening in terms of it. The stakes are so high. James Jackie came in a short while ago, and then he cast his vote, led by his campaign chairman, Sami Jenki. The candidate for the MPP, in the morning when we were reporting, whilst I was having an interview with the minority whip, he had come in also, but didn't want to speak with us. But he's been moving from one polling station within the Breku area here, also supported by his some big wigs of the NPP who are around him as well, making the rounds. It's been a crisscrossing and all that. And the issue about vigilance from both sides, I must tell you, I spoke to Kodeo a short while ago. That story should be up for midday. Kodeo has expressed worry about, the reports of inducement and all these allegations here and there, and they think that the police or state security institutions should take this matter up. In fact, they have said largely they are monitoring of the situation from the places that they have gone. They've deployed about 15 people who are on the ground, and the reports they get largely has been peaceful, apart from this reports and accusations of inducement and monitoring and all of that. But in the shot over there, I mean, you can still see from the queues quite above that. I must tell you, Alfred, that the police is actually not even allowing the media to come close. If I can just go back a little bit, and then you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 police stations at the Methodist School Park over here. That Methodist School Park that is here is quite huge enough that they have barricaded virtually the whole place, not even allowing the media to get very close. And I mean, understandably so, when the candidates, especially the candidates, for instance, when Jackie Kwesi came, the number of people that were following him together with Charles Opoku as well, the number of people that follow them, they actually want to clear the whole area so that it is not inundated by party supporters to create any chaos of the sort. And so the situation on the ground is that it's been largely a peaceful election, apart from these incidents that we have seen. But the police have been very much, for want of a better word, on top of their job in arresting these two individuals that we have reported on, Alfred.
I see. So, under what circumstance was this gentleman arrested? What was he doing? How did the police fish him out?
Well, I mean, there were complaints since morning that the particular house, for instance, where that inducement allegedly was ongoing, he was part of the people that was there, and that they should go in there and then pick them up. But the police were also not responsive immediately. But not too long after that, before the candidates of the NDC came, then the self-styled military man had come in, and when he came in, I'm not too sure whether there was a confrontation of the sort with other people, but all we saw was that the Ghana Police Service had just gone in to quickly arrest him. One, on suspicion also that he was wearing a camouflage. The camouflage, they say it belongs to the military, and that he was not supposed to be wearing that. On the other allegations that he was part of the people over there, the police have not made any comments on it. In fact, the police have been very, very silent on these arrests that they have made. They've not officially communicated, for instance, the reason for these arrests and all that. Maybe in the course of the day, we possibly might be receiving a statement confirming these arrests and also the reasons that they have arrested them. If there will be any charge or something that will be leveled against them, we are not too sure. Until that happens, well, it still remains the media picking shots that they have arrested them.
Well, Assin for so indeed, Assin Breku as well, as expected ahead of today, was going to be a hotbed of activity, and from the way you're painting things, it's turning out to be the case. Now,
No, Alfred, sorry to cut you, Alfred. Assin Fosu is not part of the Assin North constituency. Assin
yes,
Fosu is in Assin.
indeed,
Assin Breku is actually
that's where you are,
and this is where absolutely that is where I am, and this is where Quaison voted actually, though just a short while ago.
Indeed. Now, with the polling stations that you visited so far, what's happening where you are, the areas that you visited so far in terms of voter turnout as well?
Well, so I have been to the first community that I entered. This was somewhere around 5 a.m. I went to Assin Endwa. I was also at Akonkudi. I have been to parts of the Nigo area briefly. All of those areas has been peaceful. People came out in a number. In fact, when we got to Endwa, for instance, as early as 5:30 a.m., you see the oldies who came in their numbers. And just how we reporting for the morning that these individuals had come in very early in their numbers to vote, because largely a lot of them are farmers, and so there's a need for them to also cast their vote, and then they go to the farms. Probably later in the day when they are done, they might come into the polling station to observe the count and the declaration of the result. So the turnout largely was good. In fact, I was asking Kodeo about this, and Kojo Kumpudi Asante tells me that at least they have equally seen that there's been some high turnout over here. Also, because of probably the hype and the high advertisement that has been given. Of course, the stakes are pretty high here in the Assin North constituency. Depending on whichever way it goes, Alfred, the NDC is doing all it can to maintain the seat they won in 2020, which Judge Quaison is facing a criminal trial over this. The MPP wants to snatch it from them because they say it's their stronghold. The president won this in 2020, and so the stakes are so high. No wonder the flurry of activity and also the people who have been inundated the place. In fact, I have just seen in my shot the defense minister whose vehicle, that black vehicle moving there is the defense minister being guarded also by his military guard. That is he's been in town for some time now. So I mean, Alfred, I can tell you that it is a lot of interest over here, and everybody is here. They are not just in the capital, but also in the hinterland. Some of the places, it's a place that you wouldn't even get network at all, and they have been able to go there. All the places you will find both NDC and MPP over there. But mind you, this contest is about not just the NDC and the MPP, the LPG, the Kofi Apalu's LPG is also contesting this election, and they are expecting that they can pull some way through as well.
And rightly so. Komla Kloche, appreciate you. In Assin Breku, and this is a place to watch, Assin Breku, because of some of the things I'm going to show you as we go on here on your election command center. It is a very, very crucial part of this Assin North constituency by-election, that Assin Breku area. Now, stay with us because we have various aspects of this constituency covered here on your election command center. You've heard my colleague, that's Komla Kloche, in Assin Breku, and then also Eric Marina Egbeta, who is on the other aspects of this constituency. Specifically, we're talking about the Akonfudi, Assin Akonfudi area. We have representation as well in Bedieduo, Assin Praso, and then also areas such as Dadia Swaba, and then also Asempaneye, Dansame, Basofi, Ningo. We're there in Achiano as well. We are in Breku, we are in Enja, we are in Bresiakon, we're in areas such as Wawase, Sibrim. All these areas we're covered here on your election command center. So stay with us as we get into the details, but I was just showing you why this particular constituency has and over the period until this by-election has seen a lot of activity in that area because of how this 8th Parliament has been and will be. This 8th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana has been all about the numbers right from the get-go. You saw the chaos that characterized the election of the Speaker of Parliament. Before the Speaker of Parliament election, put it on record that James Jatekwesin was actually a subject before the swearing in of this 8th Parliament because of the issues around him and the fact that whether or not the Clerk of Parliament had been served by that Cape Coast High Court's at the time case that was brought against him before the 2020 elections and then the aftermath of it as well. It turned out that the Clerk of Parliament wasn't served at the time when he was sworn in as a member of Parliament. And then right from then, he's had to battle his way back and forth in the court of law until recently when the Supreme Court directed that his name should be expunged from the records of Parliament. Then the Speaker communicated, in fact, the Clerk of Parliament through the Speaker communicated the vacancy of the Assin North seat to the Electoral Commission, who eventually communicated today as the by-election that we're having today. And this is how things are played out. Now, this is how things look like, at least before this by-election. Now we have 137 NPP MPs. Because of what's happened to James Jatekwesin, the NDC now has 136. And the independent candidate who has decided to do business with the NPP. That's how it looks like now. After this by-election, if the NDC is able to retain its hold on this seat, this number goes up to 137. Then they restore the status quo of this 8th Parliament, 137 with an independent candidate. If the NPP wins, guess what's going to happen? This number would go up to 138. Then the NDC will still have the 136 with an independent candidate. But in terms of the work of Parliament, the workings of Parliament, here's what's going to happen. The NPP would now have 139 because this independent candidate is saying that, look, I'm doing business with the NPP. So if they win this by-election, this 137 goes up to 138. The NDC still has a 136. The independent candidate is still there who is doing business with the NPP. So their numbers inch up to 139. So it's all been about the numbers game. That is what makes this by-election a crucial one. That's number one. The second thing that has made this by-election quite crucial is the skirt and blouse situation. The reason why the NPP feels that they have a hold as well in this constituency is because President Akufo-Addo, as the candidate of the NPP in the 2020 presidential election, won the Assin North constituency for the presidential, but lost the parliamentary. So that's why they're looking at it as well as one other place to watch. Now, this is how the constituency looks like in terms of numbers, at least from what we have seen so far. Total eligible voters, 41,168. Total polling stations, 99. And total electoral areas, 18. That's what we've seen so far. And then also, in terms of the profile of the candidates, just to give you an idea of the people that we're dealing with. Okay, Charles Opoku of the NPP, electrical engineer, businessman, holds an HND, electrical engineering associate degree, business administration, University of the People in the USA. And she's married with 4 children. Now look at James Jatekwesin. October 9, 1952, she has a BSW in Social Services, York University, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and a BA General Arts with majors in political science and sociology, York University, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And then also he's a social services and community development administrator and manager as well. But let me just put it on record that they are not the only two who are contesting this by-election. We have the LPG's Benis Enyonam Sefenu. Benis Enyonam Sefenu of the LPG. In fact, even before that, what we got to know was that there was an independent candidate, one Agatha Abedu. This independent candidate pulled out before the filing of the nomination, even though she picked the nomination forms. So that narrowed it down to three. So these are the three whose faces are on the ballot paper for today's by-election. In this order, that's how they appear on the ballot paper. Charles Opoko number one, Benny Senyonam number two, James Equation number three on the ballot paper. That's how it looks like as you see there on your screen and how things are playing out in this constituency as well. Now, we look at the areas as well that we see things going on in this particular Assin North constituency. The areas within this constituency where, in terms of the representation, we're going to see a lot of activity. So we have the area council of the Assin North Assembly. This Assin North Assembly was carved out in 2017. And then there is the constituency in there as well. Then there's Assin Breko, Assin Akonfodi, Bedieduo, Assin Praso. Then the other areas are Tintang, Sienchem, Amiaso, Dominacy, Koshia. And now let's stay a bit on these areas so that we understand why these areas are extremely crucial for this by-election today. Now, Assin Breko is the area that both James Jatequason and then also the NPP's candidate, Charles Opoko, come from. These two. The two candidates who have been described as the forerunners for this by-election are from Assin Breko. Now, some analysts have pinned the NDC's win in the constituency in 2020 to the fact that they won Assin Breko quite extensively, and because the candidate, that's James Equation, is from Assin Breko. What the NPP has done is that they changed their candidate from the 2020 incumbent Drua to Charles Opoku, who is also from Assin Breko. And that's why you heard my colleague Kamala Kluche talk about a lot of activity and what's happening in Assin Breko, because that's a place to watch. Abena Drua was from, or is from, the other part of the constituency where there isn't much of focus as we speak. But with this particular election in 2020, the candidate of the NPP was from Koshia, or is from the Koshia area within the Assin North constituency. Now, these two, we have both Charles Opoko and James Jatequason from that's Assin Breko constituency. That's within the Assin North constituency, Assin Breko specifically. Now, what we've seen now as well is that all these two have descended on the Assin Breko area and demanding that their lineage be recognized in this by-election. That's Assin Breko for you. Now, so that's why we're going to focus a lot on what's going to be happening in Assin Breko, specifically within the Assin North constituency by close of polls today, because whoever wins that area as well gives us an idea, at least, of how things will play out. Now, we'll show you. Professor Smart Sapong is a political analyst as well and a lecturer at the Kumasi Technical University. Is connecting with us on Zoom. Professor Smart Sapong, thank you so much for joining us on your Election Command Center, this special coverage of the that's the by-election in the Assin North constituency. You've been following how things have been playing out ahead of today as well. So far, have you seen specifically the issue about the voter turnout meeting your expectations as against the by-elections we've seen in the past?
Well, a very good morning, Alfred, and a very good morning to our cherished viewers. First of all, let me commend the people of Assin North for the way they conducted themselves before today. You know, election has always been a process, and the processes prior to election day are as important as election day processes, and then after election day activities. So, yes, first phase of the test they have passed, just few instances of allegation against one another from the two major camps. But I think largely it has been a peaceful process of campaign before today, election day. Yes, today, election day, as expected, you would hear some one or two instances of friction or rift, but thankfully, or thanks to God, it hasn't been beyond the manageable range. So we would congratulate them for how far they've conducted themselves. Simply that even as the day grows, the tension is managed, and then we record an incident-free day to day. Voter turnout, as has been gathered from your reporters, it's quite encouraging for me. And after this is a by-election, we all know that it is on very few occasions that you would have the turnout being equal to that of the general election or going above it. Half day, almost up to 12, we are recording very encouraging turnouts elsewhere. The area is largely a farming or an agrarian area. So they operate two modes of voting. There's a good number who would want to come very early in the morning and come and vote and go to their various farms, or some would also prefer going to the farm. You know, farming is done early at dawn so that you don't get wear out or stressed or get tired early. They go very early at dawn and then try and come back in the afternoon to come and vote. So for me, I can foresee, based on the observation, that many have turned out early to vote so that they go to farms and come back later in the day to come and observe the counting. And I will not be surprised if after 2 o'clock, the turnout would improve again, accounting or owing to those who would have returned from farm to come and vote. Altogether, I'm expecting a turnout equal to that of the general election we recorded in 2020, or even better, because of the intensity of campaign that has gone down. Almost everybody that matter in NDC and NPP have visited, or as we speak now, are in Assin North. And one of the things I expect from their impact will be the turnout, even before we talk about who wins or who does not win.
So essentially for you, whoever is able to get their supporters out today to vote will make a big difference as to who's going to win the day, is it not?
Exactly. And I'm expecting the work being done by the various parties, the two major parties, to largely center on getting their people to go and vote. As for behind ballot box decision, it's between the voter and his God. But the first step to winning is to ensuring that, especially areas that you have observed are your strongholds, would come out and vote. If they fail to pull the people to the polling stations, they will be minimizing their chances.
Now, in the run-up to today, we saw a lot of activity in the area as well. So, based on your own interactions and the work that you've done in the area, how much of an impact will the sympathy votes, especially, one of the things that we saw the NDC ride on, that, you know what, our candidate has gone through so much, and if he was given the needed resources, he would have been able to prosecute a certain level of development. So even without it, he's shown this much commitment to improve the constituency as against the MPP's candidate as well. Based on your own analysis, how are things going to play out from that perspective? Let's start off there.
Great. Personally, I am unable, or I couldn't conduct the research I wanted to do in Assin North due to lack of resources. I couldn't generate enough funds to undertake that study. So I am speaking based on feedback that I hear from my team members on the field and those things, not based on science and data as I always do. So having said that, I am thinking that usually sympathies count, only that based on the counter that we hear from the NPP, I am feeling that the overall effect is that sympathy will be cancelled out. So yes, it was right for the NDC to have done the campaign of sympathy so that the people would relate with the situation of the Chikwesing and vote for him. But then the FPP also goes in and counter it. And so in a very balanced constituency like Assin North, and you were mentioning the figures before we started this interview, you realize that it is a constituency that the presidential elections went for the NDP, but the parliamentary election went for the NDC. Very balanced. The net effect is plus 1,600 votes to the NDC. And I say this because whereas the president is winning by about 1,600 votes difference against President Mahama, the NDC, the Chikwesing, won with about 3,000 votes against the MPP's Drua, bringing it to a net of about 1,600 votes in favor of the NDC. So presidential MPP, parliamentary NDC, a very balanced constituency. If votes were kept, then the work left to be done by those two political parties was to either maintain the 1,000 seats the NDC gained or the MPP working to overtake the 1,000 seats. So I see the constituency as a very balanced constituency, and that, and then you check the level of invasion the two political parties have invaded that constituency. For me, it is very close to call, too close to call, and I just want to believe that the sympathy issue we are talking about played out. I fear it will not play out because of the counter that the MPP also went in with. The MPP sought to make the point that he's a man who could have decided early, and that if he delays for the whole thing to go against him in respect of time, then he doesn't have to turn around and blame anybody. They cite cases of other similar issues that has happened in the past and blah, blah, blah. We leave it to the good people of Assin North to decide, but I think it's a very balanced constituency that everything else would have an impact or would not have an impact. Very balanced, if you ask me.
Okay. Professor Asman, appreciate your time on this. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then also the analysis that you've done here, and then how you say the NPP is trying to put up the James equation as somebody who's not going to be consistent with the consensus development may work against them as against the analysis of that's the sympathy votes as well. We'll see how things play out. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Smart Sapong. Appreciate your time. He's a political analyst as well, joining us on this. Stay with me here on your Election Command Center. Raising is that we're going to be connecting shortly with Professor Dujemfi as well, who has been doing quite some work in ahead of this by-election to understand exactly how things are playing out now, especially because of the constituency that we're dealing with, and then also the dynamics in there, the makeup of the people who are there. Remember, the Assin North constituency is not occupied by just the Akan-speaking or Fantis or persons in that particular area. We identified Dangbays and the others as well, who have quite a large constituency of persons within the constituency as well. So it's an area that has its own diverse tribal representation as well in that constituency. How things going to play out in that respect is also another thing that we're looking at. Professor Dujemfi is senior political science lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He's connecting with us on Zoom. Professor Dujemfi, thank you so much for your time here on your Election Command Center. I know that this by-election is one that you've been also watching quite closely. Since we started the coverage, what's been your own takeaway since morning so far, Professor Dujemfi?
Thanks for having me, my brother. I hope you are doing great. Yes. Fundamentally, we realize that like you said, it's an eclectic community. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay. It's an eclectic community, and you would have a mix of indigenes, you would have a mix of those who are coming from or radiating from different quarters of Ghana who have made their home at the Assin North. And historically, we have seen that where you have an eclectic community, then the ethnic dynamic of voting and all that sways or almost invariably dissipates. And so you have an area that, for a better want of a right word, that would have a flattened allegiance in terms of voting, in terms of politicking and canvassing for vote, because such group might not have a certain majoritarian group that votes toward a particular party in the sense of homogeneity, but rather vote based on what they perceive to be the burning issue or how they feel within a particular moment. And thus far, based on what the narrative has been and what your own credible findings and conclusions in terms of reportage, I mean, it's reflecting upon, clearly helps us, if you like, to decipher that at this stage it's going to be a closely contested election. Possibly we are going to have an outcome that would become a template for the two political parties to know how they navigate 2024, among other things, within the Assin area and the broader central region area.
I see. Now, considering what led to this by-election in the first place, the dynamics may be quite different. The fact that we had a candidate who won the 2020 elections, it's gone through court back and forth. This seat has been declared vacant after a Supreme Court directive. How much of an impact will the incumbency advantage have today, taking into consideration how this constituency's path has been since 2020 and what led to this by-election in the first place? Will the incumbency advantage we've seen with the projects and all the miraculous things we saw ahead of today really have an impact as against the story of the constituency for this by-election?
So that if we are reflecting on incumbency, we must reflect on, i.e., the seat being an NDC seat, respectfully within the contemporary discourse, that which has become vacant and is being recontested? Or are we looking at incumbency respectfully with respect to the MPP being in power and that prosecutes the developmental agenda? And in that respect, the people would begin to look upon the MPP as a government which is viable and therefore must be given the nod to have a candidate who is going to represent them in parliament, to give them the numerical advantage to enable them to prosecute their agenda also in the House and broadly within the national discourse and development. Fundamentally, I think that when you have somebody being incumbent and in this respect still being alive, a general who has gone to war and won before cannot be taken for granted. In that respect, it will not be too nuanced to assume that suddenly the people's desire or interest in that particular candidate, or if for that matter, why they voted for the NDC candidate, has suddenly dissipated or disappeared, contingent even today, broadly speaking, upon the government's own performance or non-performance, as well as what the brouhaha, the impasse, and the legal, if you like, matters that we've seen subsisted over time. It is quite dangerous to make any assumption that it will be a walk in the park for the NPP because they are in government. It is also a dangerous, if you like, analysis to assume that it is going to be easy for the MPP to win because somebody was sent to court and he was denied the opportunity of retaining the seat as a parliamentarian, and they had to be a re-election or contest over time. It is also dangerous to make that assumption. I think the safest route to take is to say that it's a closest call. However, it is important for us to appreciate that the dynamics do not reflect or suggest that it will be an easy fight for the MPP. Again, I raise this point to, further say that if you look at the NDC itself, the team that has massed up, the areas they are looking at least you see that they are trying to unite their base, hold on to their base, and to make sure that they are able to consolidate their gains. The benefits that they are likely to derive from this is that they will leave the Assin North area as a united front, i.e. having their own former president and flag bearer playing a key role, Haruna Idrisu, the general secretary, and all the major stakeholders who hitherto, had some sense of lack of rapprochement to be able to work together because of their own internal party politicking and wrangling. Today, you see them working together assiduously to ensure that they win this. They know that a lot of things are at stake for them. At least, upon my reflection, they are trying to send a message across that Kumewu by-election was a home affair for the NPP. And that if you have a certain electoral outcome in Kumewu, no matter the science or the logical approach we take to it, we know that Asante broadly will largely vote for the MPP. And we know that the MPP has the majority in terms of seat, and this has continued in perpetuity. However, in the Assin North area, we are looking at a different dynamic, a dynamic which further reinforces the centrality of my argument that the central region has a flattened allegiance in terms of voting. In that respect, when the government generally seem to be unpopular among the masses as compared to when they came to office in 2016, comparably, even in 2020, when some challenges have exacerbated, the NDC would want to go into this contest to send a major message that they hope would resonate among the rank and file in the central region and broadly in Ghana. So it is dangerous for anyone to make any assumption that it's going to be a walk in the park for the MPP and possibly the MPP is even going to win this election. In fact, it's going to be a very difficult one, and I hope that the lessons that will be gleaned out of that will be useful for both the MPP and the NDC.
I see. Now, how would the economic situation that we're faced with now also impact or influence the outcome of the votes with what we saw in 2020?
Yes, a certain Osiakuto, has been on the ground. If you pick the news, campaigning through the rains, trying to get the farmers in that area as part of the sound bites I picked from elsewhere and all that. The fact is that he's reinforcing the position that planting for food and jobs has really worked and all that. And to also say that the Akufo-Addo's government has done a lot. The whole idea is to make sure that this message will resonate for them to be able to have a new vision, a new perspective about how maybe they might have seen the current government within the scheme of things. Just to take his own, there are other, if you like, persistent argumentation that has gone on, i.e. to seek to let them know that the MPP is a viable group, if you like, or party, and therefore they represent development and progress so far as that area is concerned. That has been a message they've tried to push, among other things, to resonate. At least this is to counter the arguments that, if you like, has been put across by the NDC, at least for years in the case of the MPP, to serve as a panacea to enable their candidate to win. Fundamentally, we know that when you vote for MPs, you don't vote for them, if you like, from a textbook point of view, because they have to bring development to the area. Unfortunately, historically, we have known that we have strictly, inextricably tied the MP's job to a developmental job or agenda. In that respect, when a government is...
Hello, President Javi. Unfortunately, we lost Prophet. Yes, I lost you briefly. You were making a point about the NP and then the development as well that you say.
Yes.
Now, if you can conclude on that point, please.
Yes. So I said that unfortunately, when you look at the MP's job around this time, historically, we have seen that it has also been brought into the broader developmental purview. And in that respect, when the government is not doing well, it has the tendency or the proclivity to also affect the MPs in that area. Again, the outcome of the 2020 election also, I mean, in juxtapositioning same to this discourse, also rehashes or reinforces the fact that the people were not too keen and excited about the government. And in an eclectic community like Assin North, it's likely that these factors will play out and it may suffice.
Great. Now, on that point, let's look at the economic situation on one side and then also the MPP strategy on the other side. Okay, because you've established the point that the economic situation will definitely influence voter decisions today. Unlike the 2020 general elections, where Abnadruwa is not from the Assin Breko area, and so we saw James Atuquason, in fact, inching up a lot in terms of the votes that he got in the Assin area. And we've seen in history, the people who win that constituency must come from the major towns within the Assin North constituency. Now, the NPP has chosen a candidate from Assin Breko. Charles Opoko is from there. And then also James Atuquason hails from Assin Breko as well. Now, with that strategy and then the economic situation that you said that the people of Assin North are living through this economic hardship that we're faced with, how will things play out eventually?
Of course. So technically, they are trying to touch base with the locality, especially from the part of the MPP, to assume that if the margin came about as a result of, I mean, for a better one of a right word, an outsider participating, then it's anticipated in this regard that but then when you juxtapose same to the economic situation, we would want to know what the kingmakers will do. And at this stage, I cannot put my thumb on the trigger to say that the MPP will suddenly, overtake the NDC in reclaiming some of the votes and further taking over. I would rather say that if there's going to be a winner, it should be a slim margin based on the dynamics you didn't bring to the fore. However, if the economics in terms of the dynamics rather resonate, then it could give the NDC an opportunity to leverage in this respect. And so win or lose, the anticipation is that there would be some close margin here and there. And so that is my anticipation. Whether the NPP would have broadly served its purpose and achieved its goal as a result of bringing an indigenous or a local person in that, I mean, originating from that area, would do the trick and suddenly close the gap to allow them to overtake. I believe a lot has gone on. A lot of efforts have been put in place by both parties. And I anticipate that there will be greater interest in this regard for both ends to see to a victory. For the MPP in particular, let me add this to it. To the MPP in particular, a win for them today will be very significant because, like I said earlier, it would become a template for them and they would hope that it will resonate in terms of their strategy and outlook looking at the central region and even replicating same elsewhere. The Kumewu by-election would not be a good case study for them. And I think this one is a test case for them looking at the broader country election.
Before I let you go, Professor Dujemfi, there was that particular concern that the likes of you and many of your colleagues raised about the overnight development we always see and the run up to a by-election. And so you have some people saying that if your constituency is deprived of development, you might just have to pray for a by-election, you get what you want. But have we had constituents and indeed the Ghanaian people grow and mature to the point where regardless of what is done in the last days to a by-election, they will still vote a certain way regardless of what they see?
It seems to me that still our democracy is quite embryonic, and in that respect, we still have to engage in public education and to let the citizenry know that politics in a textbook sense means it must lead to development before the day of election. And it must be also contingent on delivering home the public good. And so good governance in that respect means development, and it also comes with the rule of law and all the other indicators that we can use to measure our democratic credentials as a country. Unfortunately, the level of, poverty and impoverishment would allow, for example, individuals to want to take 50 cedis, 10 cedis, 20 cedis, pepper, onion, ginger, salt, gallon of petrol to do something. But what is also sickening, and if you like, for a better one of a right word, insulting, is the fact that the politicians know that when they go faking, pretending, and acting out in that political theater or stage, the people will respond accordingly. I hope that I will not end up seeming to insulting Ghanaians, but I think that it shows our lack of class. It shows our lack of understanding. It shows our lack of insight so far as politics, governance, and development is concerned. How can we get this right? We can get this right when we are able to at least push elections and politics of issues to the people very early. And we need not pay attention only to the MPP, NDC politicians, but rather come to the round table to discuss politics from the arena of development, something which is largely missing in our developmental discourse on some of our morning shows. We are quite interested in the insults that the MPP and the NDC throw at each other instead of having more scientific and empirical analysis every morning to bring the local people home to appreciate why they should go to vote. If you look at the Kumewu election, for example, and already said in Akan, so many things came up to wait. Once I have a TNT or once my son has provided something, I'm willing to go and do something, i.e. to go and vote. I love my grandchild or my grandson. The kind of relationship citizens must have with politicians must not necessarily be based on fellow feeling or filial affiliation and all the other things. It must be based on development. It must be scientific enough. It must not be based on emotion. That is an Asante, he's a Fante, he's my in-law, I'm a member of the party, or better still, I need something to buy, some food today, and somebody gave me 50 cedis, and therefore I should go and vote for that person. Once your vote can be bought like this, as we have seen over the period, it shows the level of your intelligence. It shows the level of your understanding. It shows the level of your insight. It shows the kind of citizenry we have as a country. It shows our lack of depth, our lack of insight, our lack of knowledge about what we are really engaging in. Unfortunately, it is quite shambolic, it is shameful, it is disgusting, and quite nauseating And the politicians who come from amongst us understand that we lack depth and insight, and they will always play that game with us.
Reality of the picture that you have just painted to us in plain language. I thank you so much, Professor Dujemfi, for your time here on your Election Command Center.
You're welcome, my brother.
Professor Dujemfi is a senior political science lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, taking us through the analysis of how things are playing out in the Assin North by-election and talking about the issues of potential vote buying. But for the past, since 1992 to date, we've had 32. This is the 32nd by-election since 1992 to date. Now, this is how the distribution looks like in terms of the political parties that won the by-election, the 31 by-elections since 1992. Now, the NPP has won 16, and the Kumewu by-election was the recent one. They got 16 out of the 31 by-elections so far. The Kumewu by-election just about a month ago being the latest. You have an independent candidate also won a by-election, and I'm going to show you the exact year that this happened. The NDC has won 13 of the by-elections conducted so far. The CPP also won 1 of the 31 by-elections done so far. This is the 32nd by-election. So that's how the picture looks like since 1992 to in fact 1993 technically till date. Now that's what you see on the screen there, the distribution in this pie chart. The NDC has won 13 of the by-election, the NPP 16, and then the rest, both CPP and an independent candidate winning that 1-1 respectively. Now, this is how it looks like, and since 1993, these by-elections that we've seen. The by-elections were either occasioned by the death of the sitting member of parliament, a court ruling or decision, or the sitting MP cross carpets to another political party, and so eventually that seat is declared vacant. So these are some of the instances that we've seen that's led to by-elections in the past. New Edubiase, the NDC, there was a by-election in that constituency in 1993. It was until the by-election occupied by the NDC, they retained the seat. The same in Wenchi East in 1995, the NDC retained the seat. Tano South, the same, the NDC retained that seat after the by-election in 1995. And then also in Navrongo Central, it was then at the time occupied by an independent candidate, which eventually the NDC won. In fact, the NPP boycotted that particular election. In Lambossier, in 1999, the NDC retained. And then also in the same period, 1999, at Blekuma Central, the NPP retained the seat when there was a by-election in that particular year and in that constituency as well. Now, in Kumewu, that's in 2002, there was a by-election in Kumewu in that period as well. The NPP retained that seat because if you look at the historical analysis of the Kumewu constituency, since the constituency was created to date, it's been a stronghold of the NPP. So when there was a by-election there, as we saw about a month ago, they won and retained that seat. In Bimbala, the NPP actually snatched the seat from the NDC. This was in 2002, and that's when Dominic Nitiwo, if you recall, all the things that came through within that particular period, eventually got into parliament. And now he's the Minister for the Defense. Now, in 2003, Wolensi, the NPP snatched it from the NPP. That Wolensi by-election, we saw quite some disturbances that generated a lot of concern as well within that period. In 2003 as well, Navrongo Central, bear in mind that Navrongo Central has seen a number of by-elections. We saw a by-election in 1995, Navrongo Central as well. And then in 2003, Gomoa East, the NPP retained that particular seat as well in Gomoa East in 2003. Now, in 2003, this Navrongo Central by-election brought in the late Joseph Kofi Ada. Unfortunately, we lost him. And then in 2003, Amenfi West, there was a by-election as well. The MPP snatched the seat from the NDC. In the Upper Denchira constituency, the MPP retained the seat after the by-election in 2004. And then you see in 2005 as well, in the Aswase constituency, the NDC retained. It's been an NDC stronghold in the Ashanti region, which is currently being occupied by the Honorable Mohamed Muntaka Bubarak, Ododo Offenso South, Tamale Central, Fomina, in Kranza North. We've seen this, and all these periods, the MPP or NDC retained their hold or their seat in that particular constituency as well. Now, in 2009, in Chiriponi, you remember this Chiriponi by-election that had a lot of violence and some disturbances as well. We saw it there. In the Jirapa constituency as well, the NDC retained the seat. In fact, in Chiriponi, in 2009, the NDC snatched the seat from the MPP in the Chiriponi constituency. And then the Etiwa constituency in 2010, the MPP retained their hold in that Etiwa constituency seat as well, before eventually that constituency was then broken into what we saw in the Etiwa West and East. Stay with me on your Election Command Center. We're going to be doing a lot more of this here on your Election Command Center as we continue to stay the steam on this Assin North constituency by-election, the coverage that we've been bringing you all the exclusive detail on the ground, on your radio, as well as on TV3 Ghana on Facebook. Martin Esiedudate is here to continue the path to how the Assin North constituency is voting. Martin.
Absolutely, yes. Good morning. It's actually about
still morning.
A minute to afternoon. Absolutely. And here at your Election Command Center, like Alfred indicated, we are going to be with you right from now until we get to know who is representing the constituents of Assin North in Parliament. So your Election Command Center has deployed the right men, have the right resources, and you would need to be part of the conversation so we get to know, as a nation, who are we sending to Parliament to enact laws on our behalf, just like the constituents in Assin North are doing as we speak. We'll be diving immediately now into Midday Live, where we will also go back to the constituency to get the latest updates. Stay with us. Let's settle down for it in a jiffy. Well, good afternoon to you, and thank you for staying with TV3. This is Midday Live, and it's also our special coverage of the Assin North by-election, which is currently ongoing. My name is Martin Esiedudate. Let's bring you other big stories making rounds in Ghana. So, like I indicated, voting is currently underway in the crucial Assin North by-election to elect an MP after James Jechi Kweson's 2020 election was declared null and void by the courts. We'll be live in the constituency. Also, 8 deaths recorded in flood-related incidents after recent downpour in the Ashanti region. We'll update you on that as well. Later in the bulletin as well, we'll find out what's happening as ongoing sit-down strike by the Ghana National Tanker